What's up, everybody? This is Chithonian and Lance here, bringing you the brand new videos here. We're going to talk about the Metalfoes Majespecters deck that I've been kind of theory crafting over the past few weeks. And I kind of want to go over some of the reasons why I went through some of the tech choices that I did, as well as some things that are kind of a bit unusual. As you can see, there's an absorbent amount of traps. So, I mean, technically exorbitant, not absorbent. But there's a lot of traps that people might find to be really weird, considering the fact that most of the time you probably don't want to run this many traps because the deck will be a bit cloggier that way. But I feel like the way that I was building this deck, I think it's relatively fine to, I guess, experiment a little bit, because that's what this build is all about. It's basically just more or less just experimenting on how Metalfoes is working and how I can couple it with a lot of the decks. So I'm also going to assume that Majespecter Unicorn is not going to get hit. The reason for this is because I feel like that since we have the recent YCS updates where they're not going to do the ban list until after YCS Remini, I think it is, and then after that way I could start doing some theory crafting on that, as well as testing some other builds that are up my alley a bit more. So we're just going to get right into this because I think I'm dawdling a little bit too much. Also, 14 extra cards. I should be running 2 Orichalc, but let me fix that real quick because I think Orichalc is actually really good. It's Metalfoes. Yeah, Metalfoes. Okay. Metalfoes Orichalc. So there. Just wanted to make sure that everything was upstanding, I guess. But I kind of want to explain other thing. My decisions as to why I think they're going to be relatively important, because I think Metalphoes is going to be really big in the format, regardless of how the format is not changing for the next few months. So we'll see how that plays out. So, obviously, you're running the obligatory Metalfoes engine. You're running 3 copies of basically everything. Stilren is probably one of the cards that I would consider cutting to 2, simply because he's comparable to Squire, to Ignite Squire. Although he's not as bad as Squire, don't get me wrong. He's not as dead as Squire is sometimes, if you play Ignites. This card's very exceptional in what it does. It's a scale 8, so I guess I really shouldn't be complaining about this card all too often. But it does kind of suck a little bit, but it's okay. 3 Kieran, because Kieran is probably the best card in the deck, and 3 Majespecter Bunpuku to search out Kieran. Some people have suggested to play QB, which I thought was interesting, simply because that it is a method of... It is a good card, but I don't think it's going to be that good right now. I'm still doing a bit of testing, so I might throw it in there just to see what it's like. So, yeah. Also running the 1 Lesser Pendulum, because, I mean, you might as well. It's a Pendulum deck. You might as well just play this card to summon Ignister and other cards, so it's fine. And Rescue Rabbit, because Rescue Rabbit is actually really good in this deck, simply because it gives you any of these 3 that you can make for any like random Xyz plays. Plus they go to the extra deck when they die, so this card is really not negging you anything other than the Rescue Rabbit itself, so it's pretty good. So yeah, I'm also running Gofu. People have actually considered that this is actually a weird choice, simply because that, well, you can't normal summon or set, and it's practically dead after turn 1. While I concede that, I still think it's a very good card, simply because the tokens kind of mitigate some of the badness that sometimes inflict this deck. Because if you only have like 1 Metalfoes in this card, or if you have like 1 Metalfoes in your hand, it's pretty much over. It's hard to really play after that. So, I mean, it's realistically not very good to have dead cards in your hand. So, Gofu kind of mitigates that a little bit, because you could just pop off one of the tokens and then search out a Metalfoes spell or trap. You could set a combination. I think it's spell and trap. Yeah, so you can just set like combination, counter, or the fusion, and just basically have some other plays for it later. Especially since this card also opens you up to other rank or level 8 synchros, such as also other synchros. Like you could probably throw in some level 7 synchros, or some level 9 synchros that don't require an exorbitant amount of materials or something like that. But I think 8 is fine. But you can throw in 7s, you can throw in like Black Lotus Dragon, you could throw in Meteor Burst, and stuff like that. So it's a pretty good card. So obviously the two level A's, other than Ignister itself, is Scarrite and Omega, because they're the best level 8 synchros in the game currently. So it's very good. People have also considered, or I play Pot of Desires, because this deck can brick pretty hard. If you open up with a bunch of traps and you don't open up with anything else, it's pretty hard to substantiate a win. Simply because this card is, simply because the rest of these cards are dead without a Metalfoes on the field or something of that nature. Painful Decision is kind of interesting, simply because it sends a, you could send basically Goldfawn or Silverbird and or Steelrend to the graveyard to summon another one from the deck, or to add it from the deck to the hand. So basically it just gives you an alternative way to searching out your other cards. So that way you don't often have dead skills. I've also often considered putting this card into 2, like taking out a counter or taking out a Steel Run for 2 of these, and or taking out a Solemn Strike or something like that for another copy of this, because it is pretty good. So it's neither here nor there. Raigeki, obviously, 3 Pot Desires, 3 Metalfoes Fusion. This card is like the most recyclable card in the deck. I don't. People say that you should probably only run 1. I still don't think that's not necessary. 3 is fine, because 3 is often usually never dead. It doesn't even matter how many you open with. It's really not a bad card in your hand, to be perfectly honest. So. Metalfoes Counter, because it's really, really good for comboing off, as well as you got Metalfoes Combination. Skill Drain. This is one of the cards that I want to talk about, actually, because Skill Drain only affects a few cards in the deck. It doesn't affect, realistically, it doesn't affect Banpoku, it doesn't affect the Majespecter engine, except for Kieran, realistically, simply because that Kieran has an effect that is that you can activate. So, and it doesn't really, it kind of mitigates some of the other things too as well. It kind of mitigates this effect as well, I'm certain, a little bit, but that's not really why it's here. It's really here to silence your opponent, since these cards are normal monsters. So these cards are normal monsters, so you're probably going to want to silence your opponent's effects instead of your own. Other than Kieran, but Kieran can just be a 2000 beat stick, which is generally fine. 3 strike and 1 warning. Some people might think this is a bit extreme, but I think there's the only stupid measures are the ones that are the least cautious, in my opinion. So I think these cards are fine. Onto the extra deck, I play 1 Crimsonite and 1 Adamanta, simply because they're really good cards. They're good cards. I'm not saying that they're really great, but they're not bad. So, I mean, options are options. To Orichalk, because double positioning and having the ability to destroy a card when it dies is pretty good. And Dynastor, because obvious things are obvious. You could play Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon, because it's a pretty good card as well. It's a pretty effective card. Same thing with Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon. So, it's pretty good stuff. You can run Utopia Lightning / Utopia, running a Magister Paladin, Beastdweller, and Breaksword. And you could probably replace Breaksword with something else. I can't remember what it's called, though. It's another rank 3, but I can't remember. It just lets you do a lot of stuff with it, but this card is really good. So, yeah. Also, I want to go over the side deck a little bit. I'm running 3 Ghost Orchestra Rabbit. This is actually before I knew Romini. So this card might end up getting cut out, but as of right now, I think it's fine. You could play it against Monarchs, you could play it against Burning Abyss to an extent, and so yeah. Maxi is pretty good. MST is sometimes good over Twin Twister, since you don't really want to discard your Metalphoses from your hand, and you don't want to discard some of your other cards. It doesn't really matter if you discard Fusion 2 from your hand, though. So it's kind of iffy. So you can play whatever you want with it, but I feel like that Twin Twister might seem a little bit too bad. But right now it's fine. I am citing 2 simply because that sometimes macro is not enough. You are going to lose to anti-spell fragrance, and this is a way to counter that, I guess. You could run Roll of the Crates, but considering the amount of traps that I run, Roll of the Crates is going to be much more dead in my openings, I guess. Torrential, people actually really underestimate this card simply because when the people overextend, you could just blow up their board and then you could be totally fine, because next turn, you could just pendle summon everything back, / you could just use everything as means of getting everything as a win condition, so... And Vanity's Emptiness, obvious things are obvious, and Lightning Prism Mirrors, this is just in case, like, random Aether, random Light Monsters show up, random Satellanite deck, random Constellars. Not really anything too particular, I kind of just threw this in last second because I didn't have anything else to put in here, but it's a good card still, but it's probably not that great. But overall, I kind of think that Gofu is like one of the main cards that I want to talk about here, simply because it's one of the best cards in the deck for me. I feel like that this card has done way more good than it has done harm. As of right now, it stands as probably the second best card in the deck, next to the rest of the Metalfoes, because I think they're kind of tied. And Karen is pretty good as well. So anyway, guys, I want you to let me know what you guys think. Tell me what you guys think I should add, subtract, multiply, divide, do whatever you need to do to tell me what you think about this deck in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. This has been Chasing and I'm signing out.